Assalamualaikum and good morning. We are from Group 2. We'll discuss in detail about Karl Marx law of motion of capitalism and briefly compare that theory with the theory of economic development by Adam Smith.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. A very good afternoon to everyone. Today I want to discuss in details Marx's law of motion and try to briefly compare that theory with the development economic by Adam Smith. Okay, we start with Karl Marx law of motions. I think everybody knows about Karl Marx actually, but never mind. I will tell you in details about Karl Marx. Karl Marx, born in Prussia, Germany, studied law, philosophy, and history, received degree of doctorate at age 23, turned to journalism that was exiled from Germany and went to Paris, wrote many articles for New York Tribune, 1867, published his first volume of Opus Des Capital. Engel edited his manuscript and published volume 2 and 3. Karl Kautsky published the remaining manuscript theory of surplus value. Matt Engels became his best friend, collaborator, and financial wrote manifesto of the Communist Party in 1948. Lastly, intellectual that influenced Marx, Ricardo, Darwin, Hegel, and Feuerbach. It's quite difficult to pronounce. Marx's theory of history. Theory of history provides framework for analyzing human society and the laws of its development. History process through the static relation of production come into conflict with the dynamic force of productions. History process through the static relations of production come into conflict with the dynamic force of productions. Marx saw society evolving into six stages: primitive communism, slave society, feudalism, capitalism, and socialism. I'll provide for you guys one column. I hope you can understand more about these six stages. First stages: primitive communism, oppressing class, no class actually, oppressed class, no class. For slavery, oppressing class, slave owners, oppressed class, slaves. Feudalism, land owners for oppressing class, oppressed class, serf. For capitalism, oppressing class, bourgeois, oppressed class, proletariat. Socialism, stage managers for oppressed class workers. Communism, oppressing class, no class. Oppressed class, no class also. Okay, now we move to low motion theory. In low motion theory, or LOM, Marx explained in detail the changes from the stage of capitalism to the stage of socialism in his theory of history. In other words, he tried to explain how the conflict between static relation of production and dynamic forces of production within capitalist society would lead to end just like the early stage of slavery and feudalism and replaced by socialism. Marx used six important interrelated concepts to construct his LOM theory. First, labor theory of value. Second, theory of exploitations. 3. Capital accumulations. falling rate of profit, business crisis, and technological unemployment. Fourth, centralizations of capital and concentrations of wealth. Fifth, reserve army of the unemployment and immiserizations of proletariat. And six is class conflict. Actually, I already told you about this law of motion, Karl Marx. Marx used six important interrelated concepts to construct his LOM theory. This one is quite detailed. I'm doing this to make sure you guys more understand when you guys looking into these flowcharts. Labor theory of value. Marx's starting point was the analysis of commodities in capitalism. Commodity has use value and exchange value. Use value is constitute the substance of all wealth, but Marx more interested in exchange value to measure commodity. What determines the value of commodity? The socially necessary labor time, or SNLT. SNLT includes the direct labor in producing the commodity, the labor embodies in machinery and raw materials in the process of production, and the value transfer to the commodity during the process. Okay, I give you example. Suppose average labor time contained in a bag is 5 hours. If a worker is incompetent or lazy and takes 12 hours to produce a bag, its value is still only 5 hours. Suppose a worker leads the field in technology and a bag is produced with 1 hour of labor. Its value is nevertheless 5 hours. You guys look inside the table. Marx labor theory. Labor time determines the absolute value of goods and service. And then Ricardo labor theory. Relative value of different commodities are proportional to the labor time embodies within each. Theory of exploitations. Labor power refers to a person's ability to work and produce commodities. Labor time is the actual process and duration of work. Surplus value is the exploitation of workers. This one, I'll show you formula. Rate of exploitation, rate of surplus value. S equal to S divide V times 100, or S unpaid divide by paid times 100. That one is rate of exploitation. And then rate of profit, P equals S divide C plus V times 100, or surplus value divide cost times hundreds. This one is quite difficult actually, because we need to remember formula.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Haziq Aiman bin Muhammad Amri, and my matrix number is 280410. So I am going to continue to give the presentation from my group, which is group 2, which is about the topic 2, about the Karl Marx. So we can see this figure, which is figure 10. It shows that how Marx's theory of exploitation works from the bar graph. So this bar graph is the relationship between the cost of production and the workday for the workers, which is in hour. So the capitalist will employ the labor and provided them with the machinery and raw materials to produce the final products. So we can see that here in the bar graph for the first bar, which is hours 1 to 6, the total cost of production for the capitalist is which is RM15, consisting of RM3 for the labor power, RM10 for the cotton, and RM2 for the machine. However, for the second bar, which is for hours 7 to 12, the cost of production for the capitalist will be only RM12, because for the second part of the working day, the capitalist will not pay the labor RM3. So the RM3 will be their profit or surplus value. So this is what we call the exploitation of labor, which when the capitalist did not pay for the labor in the second half of the day. So next is for the rate of surplus value. So the formula for the rate of surplus value, which is S prime, will be equal to S, the unpaid labor time, divided by V, which is the paid labor time, times by 100. As an example from the second graph, which is second bar graph, which is hour 7 to 12, which is the unpaid labor time, which is RM3, will be divided by the paid labor time, also RM3, and we can get 100% of the rate of surplus value. So there are many situations to calculate the rate of surplus value. The first situation is when the capitalist increase the working day for the worker, or the capitalist will shorten the working day, but they will reduce the first part of the hour. As an example, suppose the working day was shortened from 12 hours to 10, but instead of being divided into 6 hours of paid labor and 6 hours for the capitalist profit, it was divided into 4 for the worker and 6 for the profit for the capitalist. The formula for the rate of profit, which is will be the unpaid labor time over by the total of the constant capital plus the paid labor time times 100. So as an example, we can calculate from the figure 10, which is P prime equal to 3 divided by 24 plus 3. So the 24 is the total of machinery, which is 4, plus the total of cotton, which is 20, and we can get the answer of the rate of profit, which is 11.1%. So according to Marx, the rate of profit, which is P prime, received by the capitalist will tend to fall over the long run. The reason is that the drive toward increasing efficiency through mechanization and labor-saving inventions. This raises what Marxists call the organic composition of capital. So the formula for the organic composition of capital, which is Q is equal to C, constant capital, over the total of constant capital plus the paid labor time. So from the organic composition of capital formula, we can get the alternative profit rate equation, which is P prime equal to S prime times by 1 minus Q. Notice that this new equation indicates that the rate of profit varies directly with the rate of surplus value and inversely with the organic composition of capital. Therefore, as capitalists invest relatively more in machinery and less in labor power, Q will rise and P prime will fall. So why the capitalists will not use more labor and less capital? So there are two reasons for that, which is the first reason is the enterprise that promote production through capital want more profit. So this enterprise will lowering its cost of production, and the capitalists will buy it, and they will not use more labor. So second is the efficiency of production. So it means that the greater the efficiency of production, the lower the value of the labor power.
I will continue this discuss with the part offsetting force to the falling rate of profit. First, increased intensity of exploitation, forcing the workers to increase their pace to work and lengthening their working day. Next is wages temporarily be cut below their value, and after that, constant capital may be cheapened. That is, as machinery and raw material become cheaper, the rise of organic composition of capital and the fall in the rate of profit both become slower. Next, the increased population in relation to job and increased technological unemployment are conducive to setting up new industries that use more labor and little capital. After that, foreign trade rise the rate of profit by cheapening the element of constant capital and the necessity of life. And the last is the rate of exploitation is increased by reducing the value of labor power through increased efficiency of production. Capital accumulation and business crisis. Mark Atexay law stating that C to M to C is best applied only to simple commodity production, that is, money is just a medium of exchange. Second, under the last sale capitalized production, the process of exchange become M to C to M. That is, people buy in order to sell, money changed into commodities such as labor power and raw material, then sold it for money. And the last, Marx then extend the process of exchange to become M to C to the M prime. M prime is larger than M because the exploitation of labor power. This is the process of expanding investment for capital accumulation. The graph show is the phase of the business cycle. Rapid investment in capital and labor temporarily increase the demand for labor and increase the wage that capitalists must pay. However, this higher wage reduce the rate of surplus value and profit, ending the expansion and sending the economy in the opposite direction. The depression that result destroy the monetary value of fixed capital, enabling the larger capitalists to buy up smaller ones at bargain price. Some factory close, price of a commodity fall, credit contract and wage fall. The rate of surplus value and profit thus get restored and investment increase again. According to Marx, each business cycle is of greater magnitude than the previous one, adding to the condition that produce class struggle and social revolution. This is about technological unemployment. The technological unemployment is affect the rate of unemployment increase because labor is substituted with capital that such as machinery, technology and robot. Centralization of capital and concentration of wealth. First, growing size of firm weakening the competition into fewer hands. Second, emerging of monopoly power uncovered due to the increasing of capital centralization and concentration. Third, the larger firm able to obtain economy of scale and producing at lower average cost as compared to smaller firm. Fourth, the elimination of the smaller firm and the growth of monopoly firm occur when there is competition between the larger, lower cost firm and smaller firm. The last is the capital accumulation, economies of scale and the dominance of the corporation in business organization would bring to the concentration and centralization of capital into fewer hands. This is about a reserve army of the unemployed and immiseration of the proletariat. First, market waste is sufficient only to purchase the cultural subsistence required for survival and perpetuation of the labour force. Second, the worker is forced to work sufficiently long to create a surplus value for the capitalist. The third, labour were replaced by machine, that is unemployment rate increase. The last is labour were poor and jobless. For the class conflict, the centralization of wealth among fewer and fewer capitalists, as well as the absolute and relative impoverishment of the worker, lead to class conflict. Capitalists accumulate their wealth by exploiting workers. The growing misery, oppression, slavery, degradation, exploitation of the worker raise their sense of solidarity and will to revolve. The relation of the production ROP under capitalism come in conflict with the force of production FOP, and the former are rapidly transformed. The worker overthrew the capitalist and established a dictator of a proletariat. Private ownership is replaced by state ownership of production. The rate of capital expansion is stabilized and exploitation of workers is eliminated. That is capitalism replaced by socialism. This is the Marx law of motion of capitalism. That is a labor theory of value go to the theory of exploitation, and after that it become a capital accumulation and divide by a tree, that is falling rate of profit, business crisis, and technology unemployment. And the three part will divide by the three, that is centralization of capital and concentration of wealth, class conflict, and reserve army of the unemployment and immiseration of the proletariat. This is the Adam Smith theory of economic development. That is the capital accumulation and division of labor will relationship to each other, and it will go to the increase in a productivity. After that will increase in national output, and the last is increase wealth of the nation. For the capital accumulation, it will go and move to the increase in wage fund and lastly higher wage. From the theory of economic development from Adam Smith, we can know that Smith contended that the division of labor DOL spurs capital accumulation. Both division of labor and capital accumulation then work together to increase labor productivity. The rise of labor productivity increase national output, which widen the market and justify further DOL and capital accumulation. As a result of capital accumulation, the wage fund increase and wage rise. After that, the higher wage motivate further productivity growth. And the last is the rise of national output increase the good available of consumption, thus constitutes the wealth of a nation. From the law of motion of capitalism from Karl Marx, we can know that capital accumulation will cause a falling rate of profit, business crisis, and technological unemployment. This outcome produce centralization of capital and concentration of wealth, as well as rising unemployment and poverty. The lastly is the polarization of capitalists and workers lead to class conflict and the collapse of capitalism. The lastly is the conclusion, and compare it with this 2%. Adam Smith believes that capital accumulation will bring positive effect. According to Smith's theory of economic development, division of labor spurs capital accumulation. Both division of labor and capital accumulation will increase labor productivity, then increase national output. As a result of capital accumulation, wage fund increase and wage rise, and will motivate further productivity growth. The rise of national output increase the good available of consumption, thus constitutes the wealth of nation. For the Karl Marx, it believed that capital accumulation will bring negative effect. According to Karl Marx's law of motion theory, capital accumulation will cause a falling rate of profit, business crisis, and technology unemployment. This outcome produce centralization of capital and concentration of wealth, as well as rising unemployment and poverty. The polarization of capitalists and workers leads to class conflict and the collapse of capitalism. Thank you to the doctor and all friends.